I was impressing. Just so I know. 28 minutes, but they'll go by fast.
You want me to look at you?
At me, yes. Good evening, afternoon, depending upon where you are in the city. Welcome to From the Halls of Justice. Today we have an exciting guest, and I've never had someone of this caliber on my show before, so I am so thrilled. I've had some wonderful, wonderful judges, and I love them, I respect them, I honor them. This gentleman, Mr. William E. Wegner. And if you can take a shot of this, I had the honor of attending this group where he spoke at the Hilton. And he was with Justice Chin, Robert, is it Brain?
Brain.
And Perletta Jura. But Mr. Wegner is also the person who wrote the Federal Civil Trials and Evidence, the Rudder Group Practice Guide. This is federal. This is Mr. Wegner right here. This is Mr. Wegner right here. This is Mr. Wegner. And this is Mr. Wegner.
Thank you.
I am so excited.
That's very nice of you to have me.
So, if you would be so kind, I have some questions, but you can talk about anything you'd like to talk about. The program itself was wonderful. Try to see it my way.
Right.
And you brought up some wonderful highlights and just helped me focus in my thinking. As a paralegal, I'm not an attorney. There were attorneys there that they were just drinking it up, and I love this. Why did you become a lawyer? Let's know about you, the man.
That's an interesting question because I never had any background in law before I decided to go to law school. I was an officer in the Army in the Medical Service Corps, following in my dad's footsteps because he was one of those people that joined the armed forces on Pearl Harbor Day and then spent the rest of his life in the military. And so I was an Army brat, brought up in the military. And so I went into the military when I got out of college. I had a scholarship, ROTC scholarship I had to pay back. And not too long after I was on active duty, I began to realize this is not, it was my dad's thing, it's not going to be my thing. I enjoyed it, it was very rewarding to me, but I realized pretty early on that it was not how I should spend my life. And so a general that I worked for, General Cooper, who was one of those people, in your life when there are maybe 4 or 5 junctions in your life where if you have the right advisor or the right mentor at that point in time, can make all the difference in your life by aiming in a certain direction.
Absolutely.
And so General Cooper, who was a 3-star general that I worked with in Heidelberg, Germany, one day said to me, Captain Wegner, you ought to go to law school. I was floored. I thought, this is a 3-star general who's telling me I should do something other than this, which means I must not be doing very well at this. And I said so. And he said, no, you're doing just fine in the military, but it's not where your heart is. I can just tell. He says you like debate, you like logic, you like to figure out puzzles, and I think that, you'd be a good lawyer. And I said, well, sir, I don't know because I've never even known a lawyer. So to make a long story short, General Cooper became my mentor to sort of get this done. He actually paid for me to take the LSAT in Heidelberg, and then got an assignment for me at a hospital near a law school that had an evening division up in Tacoma, Washington, at Madigan Medical Center. And so I went to school at night, worked in the hospital during the day, and then graduated after 3.5 years at that program. And I should tell you, you asked the question, Wanda, why did I? Well, as I told you, I ended up there because of somebody's advice.
Right.
But the very first night, and this law school was a startup law school, unknown law school, University of Puget Sound. The very first night of the very first class was real property, which is as boring as watching paint dry on a wall. I mean, it was just, By halfway through the first couple of hours, I was in love.
Oh my
I
God.
just thought, this is, I can't hear enough of this. There are cases and there's a fact situation, there's a rule that comes out of it, you can apply the rule the next time. And so that was the beginning of my love affair with the law, was in a class that, in a subject matter that was really very dry and unappealing.
Mm-hmm.
I got that excited about that that I realized, this really is what I should do. So I went for the 3.5 years. I graduated. I had a job offer at a very prestigious law firm, international law firm, Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, and I accepted the offer. When I graduated, I resigned my commission in the Medical Service Corps in the Army and came to Los Angeles. That was 38 years ago now.
Wow.
And I have to tell you, Wanda, that it was really the right thing to do, because every day when I come home,
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying to Tally, my wife,
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe they pay me to do this.
Oh.
I do this for free. And so, I was very blessed to end up in a profession that was just perfect for me,
Mm-hmm.
and has been very good to me for all these years.
That is amazing. And it's wonderful because this 3-star general,
General Cooper, Kenneth Cooper.
oh my God, he observed you and he watched you and he saw this in you. That is just amazing. That's wonderful.
Yes, I was really very fortunate to meet that man, and we watched each other, but he obviously was more perceptive than I was, even about myself, because you spent a lot of time together. Everywhere we went, I was an aide de camp, and so we lived together for a long time, and he figured that out. Thank God that he did, and because I would not have thought of that one, it would not have occurred to me. I knew that a long-term career in the military was not my calling, but I didn't really know what it was. And then this general saw that and said, "That's what you should go do," and he was right.
There's a beautiful pledge that I saw with your name on it in the front office of Tally's office, and I was impressed when I saw that. I guess it was a statement, and I can't recall it, but I remember reading it, and it was a protect and to serve, and it was very, very beautiful. And
Would you be talking about the Guardian of Berlin?
Yes.
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 Well, if you want to hear, there's an interesting story behind that.
Okay.
I was in the military in Germany while the Berlin Wall was up, and I was assigned to an infantry division, and our job was to watch the Soviets who were watching us. We were looking across at each other. And if at that time, if you served in Berlin, which I did, you were designated by the commandant of the Berlin garrison as a guardian of Berlin for the rest of your life, which meant that you went behind the Iron Curtain, behind the wall, which you did. You literally flew in through corridors, and they would have MiG jets that would follow you in, or you took a train where they would lock the doors. So as it went through the Soviet zone, you couldn't get out. But if you served while the wall was up, you were designated a guardian of Berlin. You protected and served the people of Berlin during that hard time when the city was walled up and isolated. So that's one of the things I put up because it means a lot to me. And so that was at the same time that I was working for General Cooper.
It's beautiful.
And so it was all very rewarding.
Wow. You're an amazing man. So, we know about General Cooper. Do you have any other personal heroes?
Yeah, I do. That was the second mentor that came along, and that was the dean of the law school that I went to. His name was Dean Joseph Sinclitico, who was a huge man. I mean, big guy in every way. He was a Harvard graduate. He started this law school in a strip mall in Tacoma because it was his dream to have this school up there. And he literally rented a space, went out and hired professors, and started the University of Puget Sound School of Law. And Dean Sinclitico was someone who was my first contracts professor my first year. And like a lot of people you run into in your life where there's just a chemistry, I so admired his intellect because he was just dazzlingly brilliant and smart. and he saw something in me, and his input to me, along with being one of my professors and the dean of my law school, is that he recommended me to this law firm, Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher in Los Angeles. And Gibson.
I was going to ask you, how did you?
Well, it's an interesting story because Gibson. I got there like Luke Skywalker shooting the torpedo down the Death Star. It was like a perfect little shot.
Wow.
Back in 1979, there were not enough law students coming out of the big name schools to staff up all these, massive firms, the big ones, the top 10 law firms in the country. So during the year that I graduated, they adopted this new rule. If you were number one in your class, they'd give you an interview, even if you went to what's called an off-Broadway school, one of these unknown schools.
Okay.
And so Dean Sinclitico knew that. He contacted Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher and said, I got the guy you should look at from our school. And that was me. And so he got the interview for me. And after the interview, I got the offer to go to Gibson, which I wouldn't have gotten the interview if it weren't for the fact that A, the law firms were desperate to get more law students in, and B, Dean Sinclitico recommended me to Gibson Dunn at just the right time. So that's how I ended up there. And I got to tell you, I never felt like I belonged there. I mean, I really did. It was like, when I got there, I was with all these heavy hitters, these people that went to all these big name law schools, Harvard, Stanford, Yale, and I was University of Puget Sound. And so it actually turned out that it was a good thing because I was so frightened all the time that I was going to make a mistake, that I was going to do something wrong, that I think I worked extra hard, to make sure that I would live up to the trust that Dean Sinclitico had put in recommending me to that law firm, because he put his name on the line when he did it.
Right.
And so I had to succeed, even with all these other, top tier law school graduates.
I can see how you and your wife are a perfect fit. You are both just caring people, protectors, and you're passionate about the law. That is so wonderful. That is really, it's what we need. I thank God for you. What do you feel has been your most important case?
That's an interesting question. And most interesting and fun, or most important?
Well, let's do both.
Okay. Let me see if they end up being the same case. One of the most interesting cases that I had was a case where there was, I represented the estate of Marilyn Monroe. And
Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn Monroe.
Okay.
The family that became responsible for protecting her property and her image and her rights after her death was my client. And there was an auction that was announced. This was about probably 20 years ago now. An auction to sell off a bunch of memorabilia that was from Marilyn Monroe.
You look very young. I'm listening. Go ahead. Okay.
But there's no makeup.
Okay.
What happened is there was going to be this auction, and when you look through the inventory of the items that they were going to auction, they were extremely personal. They were her driver's license, the plans for the renovation of her Brentwood house, intimate letters between her and her psychiatrist, things that clearly belonged to the estate that I represented and didn't belong to this person who was trying to sell them and make money off these very personal items. It violated, in my view, Marilyn's privacy. So I was hired to go stop the auction and get the items back. It turns out that what happened is that the secretary, Inez Nelson, to Marilyn Monroe when she died, was given the assignment of inventorying and packing her personal belongings and sending them to the family that was going to be responsible for Marilyn after her death. She kept some of those things. I don't think in a bad way. I think she probably thought she was protecting Marilyn and holding back these personal items because she was a very good, honest, protective person of Marilyn. But then when she passed, the items went to somebody else who was not so caring, and they decided to make money off Marilyn's personality and her privacy. So ended up trying this case, and the high point of the case was I actually had to imitate Marilyn Monroe in front of the jury. Now, as you can see, I don't look anything like a
Yeah.
Marilyn Monroe. Okay.
Yeah.
But the reason that I did was there was everybody involved in that case was dead, had been for some time before this all popped up when they tried to auction these items. So there's a rule in California that's called the rule against decedent oral gifts. It's a mouthful. What it means is that because this comes up sometimes where people say they gave that to me, they
Right.
meant for me to have it, which is what the defense on the other side was. Marilyn intended to
Right.
give these to me, so that's an oral gift, and she's dead. She can't validate it.
Right.
The presumption is that it's a rebuttable presumption. The presumption is that if that person was alive, they would deny the gift.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this jury instruction, which I thought the jury isn't really going to understand when it gets read to them. What is a rebuttable presumption about it? So during closing, it occurred to me I need to show them what that means. And so I went to the courtroom front door, and I walked in during closing, and I opened the gate like I was ushering Marilyn in.
Okay.
And I said to the jury, you know, I know that you have, throughout this trial, in your diligence and wanting to do the right thing, have said to yourself probably 100 times, the only person who can tell me what I really need to know to decide this case is Marilyn Monroe. And I'm here to tell you she's going to testify before this case is given to you. Well, they looked at me like, he must have had a hemorrhage.
Wow.
He's going to fall over dead. What does he mean Marilyn Monroe is going to testify?
Right.
So then I pretended to walk her into the courtroom, pretended to have her take the oath, pretended to put her up on the stand, and then I said, and this is the question I would ask her, Marilyn, did you ever gift these items to Inez Melson? And she would turn and look at you, the jurors, in only the way Marilyn could, and she would say no. And I told them that's what the presumption means.
Mm-hmm.
That if she was here, she would say she didn't gift those things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when the jury got the instructions, they sort of wanted to kind of lean forward like in their saddle.
Mm-hmm.
And when the judge gave that instruction, they sat back, and I thought, we're going to be okay.
Oh my
They get
God.
it.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, it was an interesting
Wow,
case.
that
It was a
is-
very interesting case. And, you know, it was very gratifying because that really was an invasion of Marilyn's privacy. She didn't give those to anyone, certainly didn't expect that her private items would be hawked on an auction block.
Right.
So,
Wow. That's wonderful. Okay, tell me another story. No.
another story. See, you went to the program, which was about persuasion.
It was
about
good. It
storytelling.
was really
Well,
good.
yeah, the reason behind that program is that I've been doing legal programs for a long time, ever since I published these books. This is the one that's on federal. The one that preceded it was the state guide.
When did you write these?
I wrote those about 15 years ago.
Awesome. How long did it take you?
The first one took 5 years. And there's a story which maybe for your viewers is a little bit of inspiration. The first one was the state guide. It's also 3 volumes.
Okay.
And then I converted the state one into this federal one. And this only took 2 years to write because the big one was the 5 years to get it all together for the state guide.
Okay.
But for those of your viewers that are ever thinking about or writers, I agreed and signed a contract to write the state guide.
Okay.
And then I sat down to do it.
Okay.
And I realized I can't do this. Can't be done. I remember because I had this regimen because I had a practice too. I'm going to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning every morning, and I'll write from 5 to 7 or 8. And
How
then,
did they end up selecting you?
oh, that was the interesting thing too. I wrote an article.
Okay.
Another thing about writers, start little.
Okay.
I wrote an article for a legal organization that was having a program, and it was about challenging your judge. And the article was called 50 Ways to Leave Your Judger.
Ooh.
Okay, like 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. And I wrote this article, and the publisher, Bill Rutter, who's the original publisher of the Rutter Guides, he read the article. And because he went to this seminar, he read the article and then he looked for me and said, I've read your article, do you do a lot of writing? And I said, well, not a lot, but I did write that, and I've written some other articles.
Mr. Rutter picked you?
He did.
Ooh.
And so I was so, at the time I wasn't even a partner at Gibson. I was an associate, senior associate, but an associate. And I was so flattered and so excited to do it that I said yes, and I signed up. And then it came time to do it. And I thought, you've humiliated yourself, because now you're going to have to go with your tail between your legs and tell them you can't do it. Because I sat down. It was chapter 3 of the first volume, which was challenging your judge. I thought I'll start with what Mr. Rutter liked. Okay? How do you challenge your judge legally?
Okay.
And I started in on this, and I had this little system. I got all the cases together in this big litigation bag, and that was chapter 3. That's the chapter 3 bag. So I could then sit down and dictate that chapter.
Okay.
I opened it up and started, and I realized that in an hour and a half, I hadn't done even 3 or 4 paragraphs. And I realized, you can't do this. You can't do this. But then I was torn because I didn't have the courage to go and humiliate myself and tell this man who had entrusted me with this, I can't do it.
Right.
And so I was sort of forced to really try to do it. And I learned that, how many times have you heard that writing is you start with the first word or the first sentence of the first paragraph of the first page,
Wow.
like the first step on a journey. And so I made myself start with the first word and the first sentence of the first paragraph, and I wrote it. And then I wrote the next one and the next one. And the thing about writing is the more you do it, it's never terribly easy, especially writing law books.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you do it, the more efficient you become in doing it. And so it did take 5 years, but we got it done.
Wow.
Bill Rudder really liked it, and then he asked me if I'd work on the federal guide after that.
Wow.
And by then I was kind of cocky because, I got this one done.
Wow.
So I said yes, and that resulted in the federal guide.
So that was 7 years. 7 years.
7 or 8 total to get both of them done.
That's wonderful.
And that was the beginning to the program that you were so kind enough to mention. Along with being a publisher and author in the Rudder Guide law books, that sort of sets you up to then become a speaker on the law. And so I spoke on the law for years and years and years for Rudder, who passed away a couple of years ago. But the programs got to be sort of stale. And so the head of the programs for the Rudder Group came to me and said, what can we do to liven this up? And so I thought, what we need to do is stop doing programs sort of like Lockstep, which were, Civil Procedure Update 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013. It's just the same thing, but you're just updating it every year, which is important, but it's boring. And so we decided we'd have a bunch of programs that are designed to get lawyers through rough waters, avoid traps, getting in trouble. And so we call it the Rough Water series, and the first one was on persuasion, and that was this one.
Okay.
And when we're trying to name, the other thing that the program director wanted to do was stop using these stale titles.
Okay.
Come up with something that's kind of catchy.
Well, there's nothing stale about you.
Well, it got called Try to See It My Way because I was shaving one morning and thinking about what the title should be, and the song came into my head, the Beatles song,
Oh my God.
Try to See It My Way. And I thought, well, that's better than, the art of the deal or getting to yes or something. So we called it, Try to See It My Way.
Nice, very nice. This is wonderful. There was something else I learned really valuable during this seminar and this lesson that I'm not going to say out loud because you have to buy it. But you said something very interesting about mediators that just tickled my ears, and I thought, is that what they do? And that was wonderful. And then Justice Chin made a little funny remark about you, saying that he knows now how you feel about mediators. So that it was wonderful. It was really great. And I just find that you and your wife are just two awesome spirits, people, purpose. It's purpose driven. It's
thank
just
you. I'm very
awesome.
lucky that Sally and I found each other, at the right point in time in our lives, and it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life was meeting her. And I know that you were kind enough to interview her earlier, and she really did build that practice. And I think she told you at our kitchen table is where she started. What she didn't tell you is that by the time she had 3 or 4 women working with her at the house on this baby practice, this firm that she was building, I threw them out.
Okay.
I said, this is enough. I mean, this is where I live. I want to be able to walk over there with a towel on, and not have 3 women asking me, how do you do a subpoena? And so that led to her office in Brentwood because she got evicted from our house.
Okay. Well, you are one powerful personality. I really like that. And you're married to one powerful personality.
That's for sure.
I have to tell you something that I have been really honored throughout my lifetime I'm nowhere near the caliber of you and your wife, except I do care about people, but I am so honored. I've been blessed to have Judge David Surmeyer. It's Samuel in the books, but it's Surmeyer because his father, Cunningham III, be on my show, and he's my inspiration. I've had Judge Craig J. Mitchell, which in a moment in time when he was on the show, it touched and changed my life. One of the people that he inspired took the time to check on someone who was lying on the ground, and they were dead. No one else noticed, but it only takes a minute to care sometimes. And it really turned me around in some areas in my life for purpose. Judge Rudolph Diaz, he's been absolutely wonderful. He cares about children. All my shoe money got spent one summer because I was practicing caring about these wonderful children. Girls are expensive. And lately, I was honored to meet Judge Kelvin Filer, and they had him on Channel 5. Now, you're the only person that I am just so thrilled to meet. Now you're up there with my judges. And I didn't
that's
find
an honorable place to be.
Oh, that's
I tell you what, it sounds like these were your General Coopers, right? Your mentors.
They're wonderful, but you're the only one that I didn't see on Channel 5 yet. I've seen them on Channel 5. You're the one that I actually got to meet from meeting this absolutely fabulous woman, and you both. It's through a practice that you're so knowledgeable in. Like I said, this is like the Bible, and you wrote it, and it's your heart and your soul and such purpose. And all of these men who sit on the bench, anybody who's worth anything, who absolutely, and they pass the bar, they're following your code. They have to know what you said. This is absolutely
wonderful. Well, you want a funny
wonderful.
story about that? There's a good and a bad side to being the author of these books.
Okay.
The bad side is that my opponents use it against me from time to time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be making some argument in front of a judge, state court judge. One instance comes to mind, and my opposing counsel says when it's his turn, "That's not what Mr. Wegner said in his book."
Oh my God.
And I go, "Oh, whoa!" And so the judge will say, "Well, let's check that out." And then he'll look at me and say, "Well, Mr. Wegner, what about that?" And I say, "Well, I'm not sure that I wrote that chapter." There were other authors on the book too, or most of the time they've misstated it, and I'm able to, at the break, go take a look at it and say, "This is what I said."
Perfect.
But your opposing counsel likes to use that as a zinger. That he's saying that now, but that's not what he said in his book.
Awesome. Well, I'm just totally impressed that you're also one of the few people that I've met who you are actually in love with the law, and you didn't know an attorney. You didn't start out that way. That's amazing.
It really is. I mean, it is, because I think a lot of people had some exposure to someone who was in the profession who could say to them, "Here's what it's like." But again, I had never met a lawyer before General Cooper said to me, "You ought to go to law school."
Did General Cooper have an attorney in his family, or? General
Cooper had a lot of attorneys working for him.
Okay.
Because he was a 3-star general. He had judge advocate generals that were on his staff.
Okay.
So General Cooper knew much more about being a lawyer than I did. That's for sure. And that was so. I was the beneficiary of his expertise and what it meant to be a lawyer.
You're awesome. I want to thank you so much, William E. Wegner, writer, author, attorney, Tally's husband.
That's the most important one.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Join us next week on From the Halls of Justice. I don't know if anybody can beat this. You are absolutely fabulous.
Thank you.
Wow.
Are we done?
Well, and it just takes one, and then after.